Hi there, everybody. I hope everyone's having an awesome day. This is Stream of Truth. We are on episode 3, and today we have a really scintillating topic. It's how to maintain a harmonious relationship. And I'm Dr. Tassel. I'm here with the amazing Sean Kelly. And this topic is somewhat near and dear to us because we are in a relationship and have been really trying to figure out how to have a harmonious one.
We've been winding our way through the difficult paths, and
Yeah, we're kind of in training here. So we just wanted to share our experiences and some of the insights we've had, hopefully to be helpful to anyone else out there. And before we get into all that great stuff, I'll just read our mission statement of our Stream of Truth channel. And that is to bring self-healing and expansion through living in our truth, sharing practices, experiences, and teachings in an uncensored, unrestrained way, and always with love, helping others understand and know that they are their own hero. Okay, so let's talk turkey here. Let's get into this. So I'll just start that one of the learnings I feel I have had in how to maintain, develop a harmonious relationship is this idea of leaning in to uncomfortable situations or conversations. And what's been really interesting for me is looking at my behavior, my interactional patterns in previous relationships, and how I would like to show up now in my current relationship. And I'm not sure that I was great at leaning in to uncomfortable conversations or situations. I feel so committed to it now. It's feels really, 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 really important. What's your take on this, Sean?
On the one hand, I recognize how important it is, and on the other hand, I'm still dealing with that uncomfortable feeling. For me, most of the discomfort comes around things when I'm talking about issues that my masculine does not want to admit. That's usually where I run into the most tricky situations, where I'm like, I don't want to admit these things about myself or admit these feelings I'm having, and they're embarrassing, and I can feel ashamed and even guilty about them. It's that sort of this idea that I want to present this strong, put together person, which obviously we're not always. It sometimes gets messy, right? And so I'm still learning how to do that. I have never been one to do that, right? So for me, it's totally new. I'm aware of how important it is, and so I've been one of the things that we've been working on together, I think, is making sure we express our feelings, whatever they are. And especially if they're bad, right? Although, like, I can still do better at expressing my positive feelings too, right? My expression in general is a little bit understated, I would say, in comparison to you. You're very open with pretty much everything. I'm sure there's some hesitancy around certain topics and different things, but I think it's super important, and I think it's also a really good indicator for us in our spiritual development, because the things that are feeling sort of like obstacles or feeling bad are almost always an indicator of like something about ourselves that needs healing. So that's one of the ways that we can sort of use the relationship as a tool to highlight or put a magnifying glass onto aspects of yourself that you're not super aware of necessarily, or things like that.
Yeah, I love that. And I just love in general the idea of whatever kind of triggers some fear in you to lean in, whether it's in a relationship or in your career or
Yep.
any aspect of your life. I love that practice. I find it really exciting that that's where the gold is. That's where the treasure is. That's where some healing expansion can really take place.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe I'm strange, but I find it so fun. Maybe that's a weird word to use, but to be super transparent and super honest.
You are strange, yes.
Strange.
I like to be super transparent and honest, but you just take it to a different level than I've witnessed ever. I do as well in my own ways, but you're more consistent across the board, I would say. So yeah, I would say it's totally strange, but it's a great thing. So, I was going to say sometimes it can be challenging because I have to try to meet you where you're at, right? And that can be challenging for me because I have to sort of step my game up when it comes to expression.
I want to talk more about what we just said, but I also find it interesting what you just said about step my game up. And I think this is just another point we could flesh out, that in any type of relationship, we get a lot of motivation. It shines such a close mirror on ourselves. And then it gives, I think, a lot of motivation to step up our game. And we've used this metaphor before of a carrot, like there's a carrot dangling in front of you, and that's this beautiful person that you're in relationship with, that you want it to go well, you want it to be amazing. And at times it feels like you're being asked to step it up a bit or to expand so that you can have that harmonious relationship. And it feels like almost like relationship is this clever way to get us to move forward and to look at ourselves and expand where we're really being called to.
Yeah, totally. And it's those, that's one of the ways that we sort of step into the fear and then elevate or expand, right? We sort of start to embrace aspects of ourselves that we didn't really embrace before. So, and we're sort of not forced, but we're sort of, like you said, enticed into doing it through motivation, the carrot, right?
Yeah. So the relationship is the reward, and to have a harmonious relationship, a balanced relationship, may take a little tweaking of how we show up, and so I think it's really a great orchestration to help us.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that the other reward too is that you end up being better, right? Like you end up stepping your game up, and then that can become sort of your new norm. And so you're sort of constantly evolving with each other, and constantly stepping your game up to meet each other where each other are at in various areas. So, and so the goals in my eyes is not only the relationship, but it's also the expansion that you get from two conscious contributors to the relationship, right?
Totally.
That's the important. It has to be done in a conscious way. Both people sort of need to be aware that they're triggering each other, and that they're having to face themselves, and that when they see when somebody triggers them, like their partner triggers them, they have to sort of see that it's an aspect of themselves that they're refusing in some way, right? And if people aren't aware of that, then it becomes the blame game. Well, you did this and you did that, and so if you're in a conscious relationship that understands that the other person's a reflection of you, then you understand that they're doing that thing, whatever it is, or they said that thing, and it doesn't really it doesn't really, it's not a thing to get upset with them over. They're just being as they are, and everything's perfect with that. And so it can be challenging though to like constantly remind yourself of that. And I'm sure that I've done a whole bunch of weird stuff that you've been like, what is he doing? Oh my God. Like even today I was late for the stream, and I'm sure it bothered you. And just even those little things, like those little things.
Yeah, and maybe we can just pause here because you're bringing up so many great points. And I'll just share. So yeah, let's use the example of today. It's a great example.
And we haven't talked about this at all, so
yeah.
that'll be interesting.
So in my old way of being, how I used to be in relationship, I think I would have reacted to you being late, and I would have maybe complained about it or said, what's going on? Why are you late? And this is important. We shouldn't be late. And it would have been all about you and what you did. In my new way of relationship, I noticed that you're late. And the first thing that I now do is I just notice what feelings come up for me around that. So I'm just going right back to myself, first thing. And so the feelings that came up were, I was frustrated. It made me be like, this is not the way to do things. And I don't, I'm always on time and I don't like this. So all that stuff came up, and it was uncomfortable. It wasn't like I loved to feel all that, but I did. I felt all that. And then I felt calm about it. And then I thought to myself, I'll probably just talk to him about it later and see if we can do things differently. And then really interestingly, I felt some insight come in about it. And the insight was just honoring who you are as a unique being and your relationship with time, and seeing you as this whole being with certain strengths and certain characteristics. And it's a package deal. It's a package deal. So for instance, to me, you have this absolutely amazing connection with spirit, and you're able to bring through information and downloads that I don't think anyone else can. And you have that gift because of sort of how you live in the world and how you're not super attached to the personality and to things like time or money.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I'll just quickly say, I have trouble seeing time, and I have difficulty understanding currency in any form. And I remember understanding these things, but I can't easily get to a place where I understand them right now. The way that we see time, to me, is just not super real. And so, and that's a byproduct of trying to maintain presence in all moments. And what happens, a side effect of that, is that you end up just flowing. So you don't think to set an alarm, or you don't think to do the things that a normal human who has obligations would do. And so this has been something that has been a challenge with me and Tassel for most of the relationship. And I will say that I've gotten a lot better.
Yes.
But I am still I'm still doing my best to like sort of reintegrate into time.
Yes.
And so that's why she's saying, honoring that aspect of me. And I also apologized immediately. I knew as soon as I woke up late, I knew that I was I was putting her. It was almost disrespectful. It was not. It wasn't intended, and I wasn't like. It just wasn't very honoring of her time, and so I knew that immediately. So I said sorry a few times, and then it took me a while to like wake up and get to a state where I can even do a live stream. So it was actually I ended up being way later because of that. So and I think the most important thing that you brought up is honoring the other person's expression, whatever they did, honoring that, looking for the sort of the silver lining to it is what I like looking for a way to love that about them, right?
Yeah.
Like you turned it into a sort of a compliment for me,
Yes. Yes.
and
And
I think that's huge.
yes. And so I love that word honoring. So honoring just who you are, and then unconditional love and acceptance.
Yep.
And if it's too difficult for me the way you are, then I can choose not to do live streams with you, or whatever. And so that's my choice. So we see the person for who they are, we honor them, we love them, we accept them, and then it is our own choice how we want to interact with them. We take responsibility for that.
Yep.
And along with that is this type of conversation about it, that just to talk about it, like,
Yep.
Rule number one, to communicate. But this is so different from how I think I used to be in relationship. And I think even in the beginning of our relationship, I was different. I was more reactive. I was more blaming. I was less unconditionally accepting. I didn't go within as much to feel what it brought up for me, and I wasn't getting those insights. So this has been a really big journey, healing journey for me, to put what we're talking about into practice.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight as well that once you start the relationship and really start to get to know the person, like you sort of know them, right? You kind of get an idea of how they are, right? And so, like you said about choosing, you've chosen to participate in the stream with me, right? You did that in full awareness that I'm not the best with time, and that I'm a bit weird when it comes to scheduling stuff, and that I'm trying to get better, right? And so that's part of it too, I think, is understanding that both parties are responsible for creating that scenario, right? Like we both you agreed to participate knowing that I could have these types of things crop up, and sort of almost just sort of being aware of that, and then for me it's a learning experience for me to try and like get back to time. And the main thing was like if I set an alarm it would have been fine. I just didn't think to do that really. And then I tried to explain it going backwards by saying, I must have just thought I wouldn't sleep that long. And I'm not even sure if I thought any of that for real. But that was my explanation. That's the brain going, oh, let's put logic to this. I must have done this. And I'm not sure if that's true. I think I just didn't think to set an alarm and just went to sleep. And then I just slept longer than I wanted to. But
and I want to say here is that, so to me you have magic. To me you're a very magical person. You're very otherworldly. You're very unique.
I'm a strange person.
But I wouldn't say strange. I think
I'm eccentric,
very magical. And so I love that about you. And with that comes possibly some other aspects that could be challenging for me.
There are side effects.
Yeah, because I am much more sort of in the human world and much more attuned to time and money and these sort of worldly material things. But so I'm drawn to you because of that magic, and at the same time, there can be some challenging aspects. So
And it
I
goes
don't,
in the reverse for me.
yeah,
So I just wanted to highlight that's one of the reasons for attraction is the
yeah,
polarity differences.
yes,
And so I'm attracted and repelled by the same thing, the same dynamic. But on the other side, like sometimes you'll be talking about money and time and these different material things, and I'm like, why does she care so much about this stuff? And then I remember I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, okay, this is what humans care about. I get it. I get it.
right,
I can come back to the human world again. And so it helps me in that way as well. But it's I think in all of these in all of the attractions, the pulls are always sort of the polar opposites. There are things that are very very similar about us that are very same almost, and then there are aspects of each other that were just like the total opposite. So it makes for a really interesting dynamic as we both try to balance with each other, and then constantly accept and honor the other person for
yeah,
the way that they are, right?
yes. And I like to think of it almost as soul retrieval. That's just the
Yes.
way I like to think of it. That part of my pull towards you is I see aspects of myself, of my soul, that have been a bit suppressed or hidden away, or that I couldn't really express given my contextual environments. So, for instance, your super easygoing, chill orientation to life, and not worrying about things like time or money. That is so appealing to me. My soul yearns to have some of that in my own being. Um, so, you said it very eloquently, but I think part of the pull that we often have with another is we see aspects of them that haven't been fully blossoming in ourselves.
A hundred
And
percent.
and and I can just say, over the course of knowing you for almost a year and a half, I think that I've been able to integrate some of those orientations a bit more. Like, you have helped me become more relaxed about things like time and money.
As we accept the other unconditionally in whatever state they're in or whatever they've brought to the table in that like moment, that experience, once we accept that unconditionally, that means that we're accepting it within ourselves as well. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll embody it, but we're accepting our capacity for it. So the higher self, I think you touched on a really good point when you said soul retrieval. Literally, the higher self. That's every single interaction with a human to human, is for that purpose. That's every single one. In a relationship like ours, it's just constant, right? And that's why these types of relationships tend to happen sort of when both people get to a point where they're ready for that type of intensity. Because I guess you can sort of imagine, like, if I was confronted, like that conversation could have went so differently. If you blamed me, I likely would have been defensive, and then both of us would have left that interaction with a bad taste in our mouth, right? And that's what would have happened in the past. Somebody would have said something to me, and then I would have get on the defensive and start justifying my behavior. It doesn't matter if my behavior was wrong. I would just justify it somehow because I have to defend myself because I'm being chastised, right? And I think the turning towards the unconditional acceptance of the other in any situation is essentially saying, I accept myself. I accept what I see in myself. And that's soul retrieval. That's how we remember our wholeness.
Yeah, and what I notice, and we've talked about this, is that with you, where I seem to be invited to grow are the aspects that I know I really need to.
Mm.
So part of part of what I seem to be being invited to grow on is my voice, and just always speaking the truth and always saying in a gentle way maybe what might be difficult for me or where I'm getting triggered or whatever. And that's really uncomfortable for me. I did not grow up that way. That my egoic self would prefer, like, I didn't have to do that. Like that, my egoic self would prefer everything is so smooth and easy with Sean. I don't ever have to speak up. I don't ever have to broach a kind of awkward, uncomfortable situation. It's really uncomfortable for me. I don't like it.
It's uncomfortable for me too.
Yeah.
Because I experience the other side of it where I'm like, oh, I've let her down. I experience those guilty feelings, shame,
Yeah.
Various feelings like that. And then the masculine side is like, oh, we can fix this. We got to fix it. We got to do something, but we can't do anything because the thing's already happened. So then I get like frustrated about it. Not at you, but just like in general at the whole situation. And it's interesting. The mind sometimes will point blame at you, and then I have to remember, right? Like I have to sort of remember that, this is what we are sort of here to do with each other, is to literally do those things that are uncomfortable in order for our own growth. And I
just want to pause there because that's such a great point. So when we first came together, I wasn't really aware that we're coming together in part to bring catalysts to each other, to trigger each other, to help shine light on our shadow that we haven't seen before. And I didn't know that. I did not know that.
There's, I think, this, like, we have this idea of what the great relationship is.
Yes.
And in our idea, it's just peaceful, right?
Yes.
And just all roses and daisies and dandelions and delicious foods. And then the reality is that it's mostly peaceful, but there are moments, there are things that, happen. And because of the intense attraction, it's the emotions are very intense, and a lot of times we highlight for each other the most difficult things that we need to notice.
Yes,
exactly. Not just surface level stuff. Like I'll do something that reminds you of something that happened when you were a child, right?
Yes. Yes.
And same with you and my experience. So we are literally here to like bring that up with each other. But that only happens when both are conscious of it.
Yes, exactly. I love everything you said, and I'll just kind of add to what you said. I think my vision of a romantic relationship was what you see in Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
Which is mostly, well, usually, there's some like challenge they go through, but then it's all like very smooth and easy, and it's, always a happy ending. And
happily ever after.
Yeah, happily ever after. And so I came into this relationship with that sort of rose-colored glasses viewpoint. And oh my gosh, in the beginning of our relationship, I just thought, like, what is going on? Like, this is not really harmonious at all. I'm getting triggered all the time. I don't even think I would have used that term. I didn't even realize, like, oh, that's what's happening, getting triggered. I just was getting upset a lot. And kind of sometimes, looking at you, that you were doing something wrong and, maybe needed to change or something. I did not get it. And now I really, really understand that our union, our partnership, our relationship is intended to trigger me in certain ways. You are doing me this beautiful service, this beautiful favor, because it's all in me. if I'm having a very dramatic emotional response to something you're doing, well, that lies with me. That's my stuff. And pretty much every time when I go into those feelings, I'm always brought to other situations, other relationships where I experience the same feeling, kind of the same situation that I don't think I had fully processed and felt. A lot of it is around my childhood with family members. And just to give a specific example, a lot of abandonment triggering has happened to me in our relationship. And before our relationship, I didn't even realize I had abandonment stuff. I glossed over that. I paved over that in my mind, a lot of abandonment in relationships. And I'm not saying this was fun. It was super painful. But some interactions with you really triggered that abandonment energy. And when I went into that, I could really see, oh my gosh, this has actually really been a big theme in my life. And so that it was really helpful that you performed that service for me.
Yeah, I'm stoked that you can see it that way. I knew that you did see it that way. When we first started, I was aware that we would do this. I was totally aware of it. But it was still not something that I had experience with. That, like in hindsight, I had experience, like thinking back to my relationships and what they were doing for me.
Yeah.
But as far as like real world, moment to moment experience of dealing with like deep catalyst,
Yeah.
and getting triggered, and because I think especially at first, I didn't really tell you when I was being triggered.
Yes.
I didn't really
right.
share. I didn't really see a point in sharing it.
Yeah.
What I've learned from going forward is like sharing it tends to not only do you sort of gain more just by speaking about it, like you gain more insight, but the other
Yeah.
person then reflects back to you another perspective that you may not have noticed, or things like that. So there's a lot of value. Instead of like, you can totally just deal with it on your own. That is what I did for a long time, but it's more effective to talk about it.
And
Yeah.
along with the positive benefits you've already mentioned, I'll just say on my side, and maybe this is a divine feminine thing, it feels very intimate and very reassuring when you share your feelings, the good and the bad. Just when I connect with you on a feeling, emotional, heart orientation, it's to me, it makes me feel much more connected and secure in our relationship. The hardest, I've said this many times, the hardest thing for me is when you don't communicate to me, when I feel like you kind of retreat a little bit or withdraw. That I find really difficult.
Yep. Yep. And usually when I'm doing that, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I think when I'm doing that, it's because I'm not sure how to phrase it. I'm not sure how to frame it. I'm not necessarily even sure what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not as in touch with what's the word, like the specificity of the emotion, as
Yeah.
much as I can sort of feel the energy center that's distorted, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I can feel that the distortion is coming from my sacral or my solar plexus, and that's causing a sort of distortion in my energy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? Ugh. And but I can't immediately translate it into words usually.
Okay.
So it takes time for me to then like assess it and be like, what is this stuff? And I think
Yeah.
it's because I blocked a whole bunch of stuff. I just blocked it out of my awareness, right? As I was coming up in the world.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm literally seeing things that I never considered, really. like
Yeah.
almost seeing the emotion for the first time,
Meaning,
in
like,
many ways.
as a boy growing up in this Western culture where you're not supposed to cry or really
Right.
show emotion in general.
You tend to just block it all, right? Because you're
Yeah.
not allowed to show it, really. You're allowed, of course, but you are looked down upon by your peers and
Yes.
sometimes your father. In my
Yeah.
case, that wasn't really an issue. My parents, the only time that they would get me to stop is if I was asking like too many questions about things that they didn't know the answers and started to get
Yeah.
annoyed. But that was about it.
So
Um,
in a way, it seems almost as if you are learning or relearning how to feel more completely and even how to talk about it.
yeah, and I think that's totally a typical man thing.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that it's gender isn't even totally real. I don't think. Like biological gender, of course, is a thing, but we're all ultimately both sexes. We have the
Yes.
energies of both divine
Yes.
feminine, divine masculine within us.
Yes.
The kundalini is the coiled serpent of both
Yes.
energies that spiral, right? And and so I think part of it is sort of like the masculine will often suppress a lot of the feminine traits, which is the emotion, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then part of my job is to come into balance with that so that and the balance is not necessarily 50-50, right? Every being has a preferred balance. And
Mhm.
so you have to find for yourself what that balance is. And so for me, my balance is like, I don't know what the ratio would be, but I'm still trying to figure that out, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, all really great points. I want to talk about another topic that it's related to this, but I want to talk about talking about embarrassing things with each other, things that we might feel embarrassed about or vulnerable about. And I'll just offer up like two areas for me that have felt embarrassing and have made me feel very vulnerable and scared. One is jealousy, about you with other women. And the other one is, and this is like really new for me. It's even hard for me to say it right now. I'm noticing. It's about feeling that I need you
Mm.
in my life. So maybe I'll talk about the jealousy one first. To me, I guess it's my thinking mind, my egoic mind feels some shame around at times maybe feeling jealous, thinking that what's wrong with me? Like, do I not love myself enough? Or I guess I have all these self-worth issues I need to work on, and just kind of beating myself up about it. And we talk about this a lot, just honoring the human in us, the human experience. And we're all here to have that human experience. And I really think we're all here to experience this huge spectrum of feelings, including jealousy, including all of it. That's, I believe, part of why we came down here in these vessels is to
Yeah.
experience all of those. So where I've tried to land on all of that is not to beat myself up for what I'm feeling and to honor whatever is coming up and not suppress it. And then also to talk to you about it, even when I
Yep.
feel really lame and silly and like, oh, maybe I'm not in my power right now because I feel this way. And it's the same way with that feeling that I need you. I think in our Western society, we are very much programmed to that complete self-sufficiency and complete independence is this paragon to aspire to.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think those are all good traits, but I also think many of us are here to be in certain partnerships and to bring certain things to the planet. And I think I feel that with you. I think I feel, oh, we're supposed to do some stuff together, and you feel very important to me. And it has just been a bit of a little hard pill for me to swallow, to think and really embrace that I actually feel I need you in my life. Not that I couldn't make it, without you, but I guess being vulnerable enough to feel that and even to express that, something I never have expressed to anyone else.
Yeah, and I think after you expressed it, I was like, oh, me too. I feel that too. Uh, and it wasn't something that I thought to express. I guess I felt like we both felt that way. So for me, I wasn't surprised when you said it. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's interesting that like when we were sharing it, it's interesting how we sort of beat ourselves up about things that we perceive about our feelings to be wrong, right?
Yes.
I think that happens. So there's a stage where you're more unconscious, where you feel the feelings, let's say jealousy, and then you actually act in the world to correct that and say you can't speak with her, you can't do this, right? You start to control it,
Yes.
because you're not interested in feeling that at all,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so you think that you can control it, and you may put rules in place, or you may say refuse that they can speak to that person, and then as you get more conscious, you realize that you need to feel it, that it's uncomfortable, and then you start to chastise yourself because you're aware of your own perfection as well,
Yeah.
and you're like, I must be wrong, like, and you start to chastise yourself for feeling the negative feeling.
Yes.
And then I think we get past that eventually, where we just sort of, and that's where we're trying to be, is like, just let it happen, and like just forgive the self, forgive yourself for feeling whatever you're feeling, if there's like a negative component to it, or if you start to feel shame and stuff around it, around the feeling itself, forgive yourself, and then move on, right?
Yeah. And so much of this is this practice of honoring whatever is coming up for
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and working to not judge it, whether it is shame or anything, just
Mm-hmm.
being with it, honoring it, just trusting yourself, just trusting that whatever is coming through is serving a higher and best purpose. And that when you feel it, there's going to be some type of insight, wisdom, integration on the other side of it. And I love what you said about, and maybe I've done this in the past, like if I did feel something uncomfortable, let's say jealousy, then I might have tried to take some action, or don't do that because it makes me feel uncomfortable, like always this external,
Mm-hmm.
you need to change something so that I can feel okay.
Yep.
And so what we're saying is just feel your stuff yourself, and certainly talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not trying to control anyone so that we feel more comfortable.
Right. And there can be things that the other person may be able to do to help alleviate some of the jealous feelings, or to help put more clarity around whatever the situation is. Most of the time when we're experiencing jealousy, in my experience, we're puffing up this scenario in our mind, this like imagined bad scenario where like it's not real really, and we're puffing it all up into this negative narrative. And sometimes the other person can be like, if you share what some of that narrative is, the other person can be like, that's nuts. Like they can just let you know that is not at all what's happening. And that reassurance can be helpful. I don't think we're ever looking to like control, like you said, at least as long as we're approaching it from a conscious way. But the talking about it often ends up putting more clarity, more dissolving some of that illusion that you've made for yourself around the potential things that are about to happen. You know what I mean? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
this whole phrase of like leaning in. So if I or you, we are feeling something uncomfortable, that we lean into it, feel it, talk about it. And I think so much of a disharmonious relationship is when uncomfortable things start happening internally, and then people start withdrawing or blaming, and they're just not getting into the meat of what's going on.
Yep.
Because it often is uncomfortable, so it can be easier to withdraw or point a finger of blame. But then you're just so stagnant. There's no way for that.
You're ignoring the opportunity for your own growth when you do that.
Yes.
And that's your free choice to do. But as you get more conscious, you become more aware that you're doing that. And so it can still happen from time to time, right? Like you can, like even for me, I'll just share that like some relationships, it's very easy to see unity and see in the other, see God, see creator, see source, whatever. Other relationships, it's not as easy. And it may not be as easy to see it in strangers, for example. I find strangers the easiest because they're also strange. And so I'm able to just marvel at creation. When I just see random people doing weird. I saw a guy wearing chicken ears or bunny ears playing chess with himself at Tim Hortons, and I was just marveling at this guy. I don't know his story, but he was on cloud nine. That guy loved life, and he just by himself wearing bunny ears, playing chess outside at Tim Hortons. And so, but my point was that there are relationships where like it's so easy to forget that they're you, right? And that they are reflecting something to you for your own learning. It's so easy to fall into, especially with long established relationships, familial ones, or what have you. It's so easy to fall into reaction, because that's the sort of, if you think of like a bike path, like you're trying to form a new path, but the bike path is all worn in and in the unconscious reactionary type of responses to this individual, and so you're trying to make a new path to go off of it and try to fill that in and make it more the default state, right?
Yeah. And I love the idea of really just thinking about every person in our life as our teacher.
Yes.
Every relationship that we are in is a teaching, learning exchange.
Yep.
And just seeing things that way just releases so much frustration, really.
Yep.
And it's like, if you think of every, say, challenging relationship you've ever had, and you think about, how did I grow from that challenging relationship? Probably we can all see just many ways we've all grown in very challenging relationships.
And that's how you find the gratitude for it, is you recognize that without that, you wouldn't have grown in those ways. So you can be grateful, which then you can turn into forgiveness.
Yes, yes. And I want to bring up a point here that has been really life sort of saving, affirming for me, is that in my experience, what I have found to reach that place of forgiveness or peace in a very challenging relationship is to feel everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. It might be hatred. It might be rage. It might be just tons of anger, bitterness, all this, the uncomfortable feelings that I'd rather not feel. But I've had a couple of super, super challenging relationships with very close family members. And that was my path to forgiveness and peace. I had to feel everything first before I reached peace and really authentically could feel forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think there are these sayings like, oh, you should just forgive, and forgiveness is for you, it's not for the other person, and all of these messagings around forgiveness. But I think it's so vital to give yourself permission to feel everything, particularly the more taboo, super uncomfortable feelings, and to not beat yourself up if might take a while to let that all move through you.
Yep.
That it's whatever you're feeling is to be honored, and it's through the feeling of it that you will come out the other side in a different location.
Yep. And I'll say too that what I've noticed in myself is that forgiveness is the key to end the cycle. So the feelings need to be felt, or they get stored. They get stored in the energy system, right? And they'll come back. Feeling them all the way through, always sort of releases you from that state, right? Like it always gives you insight to it. It always sort of it's almost like you have to get to the end of the pathway to get the little reward for enduring all the feelings, right? But I'll say that, like, to end the cycle of those feelings, we always have to forgive. Whether we're forgiving the other person or forgiving ourselves, that's what ends the karma. That ends what's the word? It's a kinetic ending of the movement of the energy.
Yes.
And so forgiveness, it's not always easy, but what I've noticed is that the faster, like, feel the feelings, and then the faster that I can apply forgiveness to it, there's always a way in to forgiveness, right? So it's about starting to find what the way in is. And like, that's why I was talking about turning gratitude into forgiveness, because that's sort of the way in. Once you realize you can be grateful for somebody doing this thing that sucked at the time, you're like, oh, okay, I can actually forgive them because they've actually done me a service. You're sort of flipping the script a bit. Or you can forgive yourself for formulating that opportunity for yourself as well. Or you could forgive yourself for experiencing rage against this other person, things like that. But the faster we can do that, and it's not like a rush thing to rush through the feelings, but I've just noticed in myself that the quicker I turn the light onto forgiveness, like, the feelings, there's no more impetus. Like, they just dissolve.
Yeah. To me, I like thinking of it a little bit like, what does my human need to move through this situation? My human needs to feel everything. And then if I take a broader spiritual perspective, I know that this situation is perfect and divine for what my soul is seeking for my own expansion.
Yep.
So I kind of try to, like, hold both those places, that, oh, my human is really feeling a lot of anger right now. Yep. And honoring that and letting her feel that.
So, like, and feeling and then acceptance.
Yes. Right? Yes. And just also this broader perspective of gratitude, of acceptance, of surrender, of everything that is happening for me.
Yep.
And even the people who have chosen to play these roles for me, to, just have massive gratitude that they took on some of these difficult roles that they're inhabiting to help my soul expand. And just being able to hold all of that, especially in relationships, let's say with family members that are permanent, that maybe are still difficult, to be able to hold all of that, to hold what your human starts to experience, and to hold knowing this is for my greatest good, and to hold love and compassion for the other person too, and still honor the anger. Like, we're just holding all of that.
Yep. Yep. Well said.
And another point I just wanted to bring up about that is, for instance, there's a family member of mine that at times I've like cut off communication because it was so triggering. And this is not to say that that's a bad thing. I think there are certain situations where it is really healthy to stop.
And just to piggyback on, I just want to say, like, if you chose to disconnect, that was probably the right decision at that time, right? You felt like you were receiving too much catalyst.
Yes.
Right? So you weren't able to deal with it all, and so you cut it off.
Yes. Yes. And certainly there are many situations where it's just healthier to not interact with certain people. But actually, through your help, I've reached this different stage with this family member where sometimes there are still difficult catalysts that come through, but I'm able to remain in communication. And it has helped me level up in some of my power, that to take in what's being delivered to me and to not let it affect me. And this has really been a new level of power and sovereignty for me. So, and again, just this idea of that whatever is coming into us is ultimately serving us, if we can sort of reframe it, you know, in that way.
Yeah, and it takes a constant attention to do that dynamically throughout the day as you experience anything, right?
Yeah.
Like, literally, my phone won't turn on, and I'll have a temper tantrum, right? Like I'll be clicking the button and it's not turning on, and I'm like, do that, right? and then I'm like, what the frig was that, right? So, like, it's an ongoing thing, and so it's sort of this habitual state of mind that you're trying to embody as often as you can. And so at first there's stumbling, and and then the stumbling gets a little less, and then you start to sort of entrain it. You think of it that way from like neuroscience, right? You start to entrain those neural pathways, those ways of being, and it's sort of a more mindful presence of what's occurring. So when you're like talking to someone, you're already grateful, and they haven't said anything yet, right? Things like that.
It's approaching every relationship in this conscious orientation, as you said, like a consciousness.
Yeah.
A non-reactivity, a noticing. It's almost like being the observer to a certain extent, in an Eckhart Tolle type of way. Like,
witness. Yeah.
I'm witnessing what's coming up for me. I'm witnessing how I might want to react.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling everything coming up. And I mean, I do this a lot now. I sometimes just take some time. Maybe I'm having a difficult interaction with my kids, or my ex-spouse is a big teacher because I tend to get triggered quite a lot. And I'm not great at it. This is still such a work in progress, but sometimes I will be conscious enough to remove myself and just feel my own feelings and get recentered so that I can interact with him more calmly.
Yeah, exactly. I have to do that often. There are just certain, so there are very few people that I concern myself at all with what they think or say. Very few. I could count on one hand, probably. So my kids say random stuff all the time. Who knows what they're talking about? Sometimes they have beautiful nuggets of wisdom, and other times it's just craziness. So, and I'm grateful for all of it because they make me laugh hysterically. So I'm not so much talking about them, but like I'm talking about adults. I could count on one hand people that have any sway of my emotional state at all. And I think we end up getting to this. I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, but we can like forget. It's easiest to forget with those people that we truly do care about them, about what they're saying, about how we've affected them, whatever it is. Those are some of the biggest, I think, like you said, teachers. Those are our biggest teachers. And so like I'm really grateful that I don't really care what people think of me, really. You know, I basically care enough to not be seen as totally insane. Like I abide by most social rules, norms, as long as I'm aware of them. But like, I don't know. So I have it a bit easier, I think, than a lot of people, because a lot of people are you know, they'll see somebody who's witnessing them and they may worry what that person thinks, just a stranger, and things like that. And I don't experience that, so I don't even know how to. I don't know how to relate to that. And so I'm super lucky with that type of thing. But I'm not sure where I was going with this. I got so off track now. Get me back on track here, please.
Okay. I had another point that just I got a nudge to talk about is one of the teachings I feel I gained from my relationship with my ex-husband was I kept getting this phrase, grace training.
Yes.
I feel I was initiated into learning some grace. And what do I mean by that? I just mean like patience, forgiveness, acceptance, surrender, highest and best for all. And oh golly, it was so easy for me in the beginning, let's say of our divorce process, for me to really point a finger of blame at him for everything. And it has been this journey of him helping me cultivate grace.
Yep.
And I never would have cultivated that had it not been for that very challenging relationship. And so looking back on it, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. And I think to myself, if I had had super easy family relationships, spousal relationships my whole life, I don't know who I'd be. I wouldn't be the person that I am now.
Right.
So, and I'm not always in this place, but when we're in a challenging relationship, to honor what's happening for the human and then to just cultivate this higher understanding that, wow, what a great opportunity for you to step into some new territory of who you're becoming.
Yep. And if you fall out of that, don't beat yourself up about it. Just notice that you fell out of it.
Yes.
Notice that you didn't respond in grace. And just to summarize grace, I think responding in grace is when you respond from love. So whether it's patience or peace or whatever it is, you're not responding from the fear or the guilt or shame or whatever it is and reacting. You're responding in love, which is sometimes just to keep the mouth shut, right? It all depends on the situation, but and even responding gracefully can even be not responding, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Just choosing not to engage. If they come at you with something,
yes,
you can be like, I don't want any part of this, and just literally walk away from it. And that can be graceful, right?
And along with that is that nothing is wrong.
Right.
That, oh, I'm having a challenging interaction, like this is terrible, like this shouldn't happen, like something is wrong. Mm-hmm. To just trust that whatever is happening is serving some highest and best purpose for both of you. Just this whole, and it's an orientation that is new for me and that I've been more and more integrating, just trusting life, just trusting that whatever is coming into your reality is ultimately going to serve you.
Yep. That's the whole point of everything that we program for ourselves. Like that's the whole purpose of everything, basically.
Yeah.
And it's so easy though to forget. It's so easy to just, like, Tassel and I are both constantly like reminding ourselves and each other, like, because
Yeah.
we both, in certain topics or certain situations, we both like forget, and we just fall out of it. and and
Yes.
and then it's usually the other person will be like, remember, and then you're like, oh yeah, yeah,
Totally.
and then you have to sort of pick yourself back up and forgive yourself for forgetting, right?
I mean, even us having this conversation today is just helping me further remember and integrate what we're talking about. I
Yeah,
really fall out of it.
that's why it's really helpful to find people that vibe with where you're at, and they'll
Yeah.
come into your life naturally if you're ready for them.
Yeah.
So that was, I wanted to bring that up quickly, because a lot of people are like, oh, I really want a relationship, but what they don't realize is they're not at all ready for a conscious relationship. And
Yeah.
I was in this state for a while,
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
and the conscious relationship won't come until you are ready, and the human doesn't know. They
Yeah.
think they know. They think that they know that they're ready for a relationship, but if they were ready, they'd have one.
Yes. And that's a really good point. And I left my marriage almost 5 years ago. And, I met you, say, a year and a half ago. So it was a long time of a lot of inner work that it was obvious I was really being invited to do before I was conscious enough to have this conscious relationship with you. So it sometimes does require a lot, some alone time and that inner work on your own.
Yeah,
Yeah. What
totally.
do you think about going to the chat and I think there were a few questions that might be great to.
Oh, my chat's not working.
Oh, it's not?
No
Okay.
wonder. I was wondering. I'm like, why am I not seeing any chat?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
I
they are.
see them.
Weird. Sorry, everybody. I did not see any of this.
So, like Ruby says, repressed divine feminine men weren't allowed to show emotions till today.
Yeah, showing emotion as a man. We talked about that a little bit. It's much more accepted nowadays. I think in the younger generation, like, people are generally more accepted just being themselves, I would say. Like, there's still a bunch of weird stuff in school about, but overall, they're able to express, I think, more naturally, typically, I would say.
Yeah, it seems that the societal discourses are shifting, thank goodness, to allow men to feel their feelings.
Chad asked a really good question as well. This might be better in a different episode, but I wonder if you're on the same page about subject like higher dimensional beings, starseeds, law of one, etc., and how that fits into your relationship. I'm curious what you think. What would you say? And then maybe I'll add my bit.
Let's see, higher dimensional beings, starseeds, love one. So we definitely, I think, each have different niches in our spirituality and what resonates with us. And for me, I'm fascinated by what you bring through and what is resonant for you. And I really honor everything that you experience. And I have some different experiences and some different resonances. And sometimes I can even like compare myself to you and feel like, oh, he's having like, much more out there experiences than I am. I'm behind. Oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? So sometimes I compare myself, which is not the healthiest thing to do. But I think we're on the same page of being very open to whatever each of us is experiencing and honoring it. And for me, I love just hearing everything that you experience.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't. I don't think it really affects our relationship in too many ways. I wouldn't say. I think we both value each other's expression and thoughts and feelings and insights. And both of us believe in these things. Like we believe, I think, in this sort of infinite of creation. So it would be pretty crazy to suggest that these things are not real in some form, right? It would, there's just, it just doesn't make sense. And then I'll just say that like, so I'm a sixth density wanderer. So when I started here, to remember, I started to just see unity a lot, right? And that sort of framed what spiritual routes I went for my learning as well. And so I think we just sort of in our life paths we chose different routes of learning and different sort of modalities. And I think that's what makes us such a good team when we're doing this type of content as well, is that I can be very esoteric, way out there, and you can be much more grounded and much more accessible to a lot of people, right? A lot of people will hear me talk and like they're like, I don't know what he's talking about. This guy's crazy. And I get it all the time. I get it like I get people constantly saying stuff like that. And so luckily, I would just say that usually, if not all the time, you are very receptive to anything that I share, no matter how wacky it is. And, it may not resonate as like truth for you necessarily, but you always honor that it's my truth, and you've never suggested that I'm wrong about things or anything like that. And so I really appreciate that. It's very helpful for me to have a place where I can just talk, and whether you care or are resonant with it or not, you still always seem to love it, right? So it makes me feel great about it because I'm able to share crazy stuff. I remember crazy stuff, and I'm able to talk about it with you, and you're like, that's pretty crazy, but I like it. Right, that kind of reaction.
And from what you just said, maybe this is for me the summary of a harmonious relationship, whether it be romantic or otherwise, is, and we brought it up before, but honoring. I just love that word, honoring. Just that, to honor the other, to honor yourself, and just to see each one of us as this beautiful piece of God, of the universe, and to honor us and all of our possible strengths and flaws and everything else. Just full honoring, unconditional love, acceptance. And it's not to say that, sometimes you're in a relationship and it's not a fit and it's not going to work, but still to honor the other, no matter what. Honor each other as divine beings.
And respect where they're at in their journey as well.
Yes.
Like, they may not know, like, Tassel may have insights that I don't have yet.
Yeah.
Or I may have insights that she doesn't have yet, or different sort of truths that we're aware of that the other person isn't, like, because we sort of grow like this, right?
Yeah.
And just respecting where people are at instead of trying to change their minds or adjust their truth to be more in alignment with yours.
Yes.
Respecting the the difference in how things are seen. Like, just an example could be like, maybe a couple, maybe you believe in angels, but you don't believe in ETs, but you believe in angels.
Yeah.
And then I would say that, well, maybe angels are ETs, right? And that's what I believe. I believe that people that see angels are just seeing ETs, more or less. But just appreciating the difference in the perception, because everybody sees divinity differently as well. And so spiritual beliefs are just sort of your expression of how you perceive divinity, and wherever you're at is perfect, and it's
Yeah.
exactly where you're supposed to be. So like I don't walk around going, I'm a sixth density wanderer, I see what you don't, silly, to like other people, right? And especially not to you, that would be bananas. But and I wanted to share too, because you shared that sometimes you feel sort of like you haven't developed enough. I feel the exact same thing with you all the time, very 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 regularly, I would say. Like just a sort of admiration and inspiration, I would say, for my own intellectual growth. Because like you'll use, I don't often experience a situation where people use words that I don't know or say things and I'm like, what are they talking about? I don't understand it. That freaks me out. That really freaks me out when people say things. I can not resonate with something, but that's totally different than literally not comprehending it, right? And so, uh, especially your dissertation and the and sometimes you'll say certain things and I'm like, what's she saying? I don't even know what these words mean. I know some of those words, stuff like that, and so I'm often confronted with the same thing.
Yeah. And I think this also brings up just a topic of, sometimes feeling less than, or feeling a little insecure, or because we each have different strengths, or you reflect to me areas. Oh, I wish I were better at that. I wish I had that skill set that he has. And and I think this is part of what helps develop our self-love, is that it's okay that I don't have that. I am a perfect, unique, divine expression, as are you. And we're going to be different. We're going to have different strengths.
Yep.
Um and just not comparing ourselves to each other or to anyone else. Like, just this as such a foundational self-love practice, is that exactly who I am is great enough. Exactly who you are is great enough. And
I
we don't have to
compare.
have each other's strengths. And that's the beautiful thing about like a divine partnership, is that we come together because we do have these um, complementary abilities and strengths,
Yep.
and just to have peace with that in ourselves.
Yep. Yep. I like to go back to whenever I notice I'm comparing myself to somebody else, I remember that I'm the only one here. And
Yes.
that help that clicks me right back into unity, where I'm like, oh, they are me. So like you can't compare, they're me already. So I don't even go to like my own unique perfection or anything
Yeah.
anymore. I just remember I'm the only one here, and
Ah,
and uh, and I know that like deep in my core that's what this is. So for me that just turns it back to unity,
yeah.
and so I don't have to sort of like go through the. I still compare, so don't get me wrong. I still do that from time to time, and then I notice it, etc. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because like that may be a tactic for some people. It may not work for you. You have to sort of perceive the unity first for that to make any sense, even.
Yeah. One last topic that just bubbled through is, and this feels kind of vulnerable to talk about, is sometimes I'm terrified in our relationship because I care about you so much and you are so important to me. And I have not previously had that experience with a partner where there was such an amazing connection and such a powerful pull and all of that. And so at times it can feel very high stakes with you because I care so much. And if things are a little disharmonious, it can trigger fear in me. And yeah, so and it's just an interesting space to live in. And I sense that that feeling will probably evolve into something different over time. But I guess what I want to say is I think before I was probably too scared to really be with someone who was an equal and who really was this beautiful match for me. I think I was maybe too scared that, oh, what if it doesn't work out and my heart is broken or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to live my life like that. I don't want to live my life in fear in any aspect of my life. So even though sometimes I might be a little scared, because it means a lot, you mean a lot to me, I'm going in with an open heart. I'm going in all in, and I'm just trusting that everything is always for my highest and best, and just learning to be a little more comfortable with my own fear.
Yeah, same. I mean, same. And comfort with my own fear. It's sort of an underlying fear that sits there, and it sort of bubbles up from time to time. And I think also it's a lot of it is trust, like trusting in each other and in the journey, like just trusting it
Yeah.
implicitly. And I
Yeah.
think once we get to that point,
Yes.
that fear will sort of drift away.
Yes.
That's my thought on it. But and that's why we confront it every so often. I think to dissolve it bit by bit instead of like, and I think it gets muted. It gets less volume to it, right? As we keep facing it,
Yes.
and then we sort of keep reassuring ourselves and to trust and things like that and surrender and then I think that will
Yeah,
dwindle.
and so much of it is maybe this healing and expansion of feeling like I couldn't trust people in my life, and this relationship being an expansion for me that, oh, I think I can trust him, and I think this,
Yeah.
is going to be okay. So just all of those healings and expansions that we experience, through the vehicle of relationship.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that was a good episode. I think that's how long have we been talking?
So an hour and 22 minutes. Yeah. So
Awesome.
probably that's good. So thank you, Sean, for
Thank you.
the scintillating conversation. Thank you so much to all who tuned in, Nathan and Ruby and Lady
Chad,
B and Chad.
Amy J.
Amy J. We're so delighted that you were here, and thank you for the really interesting comments. And so we have picked a day and a time, I think.
It's penciled in. Yeah, no, yeah, we have. So
Okay,
today I was late, but next time I won't be.
Okay,
Probably.
yes. There's an expansion there for both of us. Yeah, so we'll be back here Friday at noon Eastern, a week from today, with another scintillating conversation. And oh, Chad said something really cute. That was like romper room. I loved it.
Awesome, Chad. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chad. All right. So until next week, hope everyone has an awesome week, and namaste and love, love, love to everybody.
Love all your faces.